voice. If no one picks up, press star, and we'll call you back. So I waited 30 minutes, did other stuff in my house, no call back. So what I did is filed a complaint. And they're now looking into it to find out why no one was picking up the phone, why they didn't call back. And that's just an anecdote of the frustration, if you're gonna be involved with us, of what this is about. But the key word in our street homeless advocacy project, what do you think the key word is? You got it, advocacy. So we're advocates for the people out on the streets, advocate for them, to tell them what their rights are, to tell them what options they have, to be the advocate to create the options for them. But then also, what we've learned makes us credible advocates to the system. Those conversations I had with the mayor, and he's a good friend of mine for 35 years, I've represented him. Some of them it's a good thing, it's not recorded, so who knows who is recording it, but they're strong. I mean, why get rid of the encampments when you know that the people are there? There's a golden opportunity to go and work the encampment, to get them to voluntarily come on. You get rid of the encampment, they're only going to create other encampments in other places. And that's exactly what happens. But also, if you're trying to, your goal is to get people off the streets and to get them to go to places other than the congregate shelters, or change the congregate shelter system, the model itself. It doesn't work.
I agree with you.
Well, thank you very much. And hopefully we can begin through this project on that part of the advocacy. So even if you don't want to go out and do outreach, the idea that you would want to be an advocate to write stuff, memos, analysis, research, op-ed pieces about this crisis and how to refrain in a more conducive setting for training, where we do role playing, we have in-depth do's and don'ts about what to do. We don't want anyone going out there that's not prepared to deal with some of this stuff. It's not fair to you, it's not fair to people out on the street. So, in the context of that, if this can work here, why can't every city council person, or 51 of them, in all the neighborhoods, get people from the neighborhood to go out in their neighborhood, to talk to people over a period of time, and to then see. Our rate the first year was roughly 1 out of 3. The second year, since we learned so much more, we know better how to approach people and who not to approach. Because there are certain people that you don't approach. We're now 1 out of 2. And Eric was right also made a reference. The last year's budget was $3.5 billion. Our taxpayers' money going into this system was a total mess. And not just Eric Adams' fault, though he's now made himself part of this legacy of bad leadership, all the way from people I've had to deal with at Koch, even David Dinkins, definitely Rudy Giuliani, classmate of mine at NYU. He was creepier in law school than he is even today. In the context of that, today he's really hit bottom. I think at moments I even feel sorry for him. It's quite a statement in there itself. Bloomberg. Bloomberg used to have churches and synagogues having up to a dozen people in their basements. Bloomberg didn't like it. He really eliminated so much of those programs. They're trying to recreate it now. Mark has been doing a great job in trying to recreate it, but there's a real problem because we need to get sprinkler systems in those places now, which they didn't focus in back then. It's a valid reason, but the sprinkler system, how much does it cost, Mark? How much does the sprinkler system cost?
$60,000
$60,000 per one.
per site.
So,
And there are only 2 sites out of the 50 interested that have the sprinkler system.
so there's 48 there. But there's other stuff that we put together as advocates with some volunteer law firm. wanted to be anonymous. So I can't say the name. We put together a document for the mayor and his key people, the use of eminent domain. Eminent domain is a program that the government, municipality, and state can use in a public crisis situation. We got a public crisis situation. In the beginning of the pandemic, there were a lot of hotels that were vacant. And even some of the owners, the lawyers that said they want to give up. They don't want them anymore. So we put together a really good report. The mayor gave us the green light. We presented it back in December 2022, saying that the state should then use eminent domain and purchase some of these vacant hotels. Then the state can transfer the ownership to the city, and the city can then decide to let it be run by the city, a profit or a not-for-profit. You could take 2 or 3 of these hotels as a pilot. One of the problems in my neighborhood when they put people up on 76th Street in a hotel is that in the daytime, there was nothing for the people to do. So
I agree with you.
Excuse me?
I agree with you on that.
2 for 2, man. I'm doing good.
Yes.
You gotta stay the whole night. You can't go.
Was that the Bill Clare?
Excuse me?
Was that the Bill Clare hotel?
It was on 79th Street off Columbus. I forgot the name of it.
Lucerne. 79th was
Okay.
Lucerne.
Mark, what was the hotel on 79th Street called?
79th Street.
Yeah, but it had a name, the hotel?
Right, I can't remember.
Okay, whatever it was. So the overwhelmingly men, black men in that neighborhood
Oh, yeah.
created a stir in and of itself. And then especially when they were doing nothing but drinking, whether it was beer or something more, that created a problem. And then 1, 2 of the guys masturbated or something allegedly, that got the whole neighborhood crazed. So part of our plan was that we take these hotels and create almost like a college atmosphere, where during the daytime, there are courses that people volunteer to come in and teach. Teach the history of civil rights, teach the history of homelessness, show documentaries, keep them involved during the daytime so that they begin to see that there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And then have the social workers there who can work with the people and begin to figure out where they can go next. How do you get them moving along with the goal, as Eric rightfully said, of creating like an SRO unit or some permanent housing. But before people can get there, because I've had clients who are homeless, and people would call and say, I got a single room for them. And my answer was, I'm not sure they're ready to do that. And here's why, because you have to understand that some of these folks out there, they just can't cope. Or if they have a situation, sometimes we get a guy on the van and something triggers of something that happened in their past and they want off. Or we're about to put them on the van and all of a sudden the idea of going somewhere that they've never been before. I have that situation sometimes when I go somewhere before. Even coming here tonight, I was a little nervous. Is this going to work? How's it going to happen? And then it got filled. I saw people's faces. It's going to work. So in the context of that, understanding that human dynamic and being able to then interact with people to try to move them along, get them off the street voluntarily, and then as you become more and more credible in talking about this issue, become an advocate to try to change the system in the city council hearings, or even if there isn't a city council hearing, pick up the phone, try to get a meeting with the local city council person. Ain't hard here, but what about the other 50 people? If we could do that, I think in 3 years, you could have half of the people off the streets. Problem then becomes, how do we get the city to then create more viable options for people? And here's where we'll end. The viable options, in my opinion, are not immediately housing for everyone, because not everyone's ready for the housing right now. You've got people out there different from the 50s, and the Bowery, where there were basically just men, usually disproportionately white, alcoholics. They were called derelicts, bums, bad terms. They're people. Today, it's much more complex. You go to Washington Square Park, and you see the complexity there. You see in one part, we used to call it the pharmacy in the northwest part, because there's so much drug activity there. Back then, when I was in school, it was marijuana. Now it's much heavier stuff. But then throughout the park, there are homeless people as well. And on the side streets, there are homeless people. And in the context of that, the majority of the people that are out there are people of color, and disproportionately, they're like these two folks, dark skin, black. Even the Latinos, the white Latinos don't have as much of the problem as the dark skin Latinos. It's a color problem. And in the context of that, a lot of us in looking around the room, I'm a gringo, but I'm proud to be a gringo. That's who I am, okay? And in the context, when I'm dealing with people, I've got to somehow let them know that I ain't what they think every white person is. Just as I have to make sure that when I'm looking at her or him, since there's more of him than her out there, but there's some of her too. I would estimate 10% are homeless women out on the streets. And we have to deal with some of this stuff in recognizing what the realities are. We had some hard decisions where some of the guys would be more receptive to talking to some of the women volunteers than some of the guys. Well, that's sexism. Are we going to play that game? We decided we'll do it, but we want to make sure that there's just this kind of operation, nothing anymore. We've never had that problem.
We've got folks here from all over the community. This program is starting in some geographic areas. Could you talk a little bit about where this is starting and expanding?
Yes.
Because I imagine a lot of folks, they want to work where they volunteer where they live.
That's why on the form, if you want to put out, we ask what neighborhood you're from. So our teams have been Staten Island, Ferry, on the Manhattan side. Carolyn, Joan has been there a couple of times, and Carolyn's been there a whole bunch of times, and she lives in this neighborhood. And then we have Mark's team on 31st Street in front of the church, which is a different operation because at the church operation is food, and people come there every night. So we're not out in the streets looking for homeless people. They're already there. One of the thoughts we had at Washington Square Park, if we could set up a kiosk in Washington Square Park with coffee and donuts on certain hours during the week, so that people it would be a magnet to attract people.
Great idea, I love
People
it.
would come out, 3 for 3, keep going. So there would be more people coming in a natural way. Then we've had a team, you want to have a question?
Attorney Siegal, I'm thinking about Jordan Neely, the Michael Jackson impersonator,
Yep.
whose life ended tragically. He was put on a chokehold by a white guy. He was in contact with Bowery, the Bowery BRC.
CRA.
On a regular basis. He would go there to eat his food. So, as you said, we should start with already organized group like the BRC in the Bowery. Sometimes me myself, I go there when I don't have money and I need food, and they serve good food from Whole Foods, and there's also a van for medical. So maybe we should already coordinate with these people. And not far from here is the Savior Mission run by the Jesuits. They give food every Sunday from 12:30 to 1:30, and there's a whole line up to the 5th Avenue. And again, these are already very regular. They go there every Sunday for clothing. So as you said, that maybe we should already coordinate so that we can work faster and more effective. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, and that's an option. We feel that some of those places, 1 or 2 of the places that get funded from the city, There's some mixed reviews from the homeless people out on the street about even some of the programs, one of which you mentioned. But that's an option that people have. On the other hand, we want to get out on the streets and get people to leave the streets as opposed just to get food and clothing. We want to, that's the first step in leading to something more permanent. But for people who want to do that, I think that's a really good thing to do. Back to Eric's question. So we got a team up from 125th in Harlem. We had a team in the Bronx. We had a team back at Tompkins Square Park. And then after a while, we found out that whatever the homeless people there were, they weren't there anymore. And so we decided to move to another location there. We are starting this Thursday night up on the Upper East Side with Hunter College students, a program on the Upper East Side. We started a program at Brooklyn College, which I went to, but it fizzled out. The students didn't really follow through. So I don't know what the status of that is. We tried to do one in Staten Island, at the Staten Island College, because we were working with CUNY. The chancellor of CUNY, a pretty good guy, said that in the next year he'll let us have access to 5 of the CUNY systems, and if it works, we'll have access to the entire CUNY system. But to me, that's only just one segment, college students. What about other people? People who are working? What about semi-retired people, retired people? Let's get the whole diaspora out there. So we're now in 4 or 5 areas. We'd love to be able in a couple of years to be in 24 areas. And tonight is an experiment where if we can get people to fill out the forms and are interested, we'll set up a time and a place to do a formal training. And then we'll figure out within Eric's district, which now I've been told goes all the way to 59th Street. So we could hit not only Penn Station, we could hit the bus authority on 42nd and see whether there's anything in the 50s in that area. So we basically always want at least half a dozen people to be part of the team. Why? Because each Thursday night, we don't expect every person to be able, because of their life, to be out there every Thursday night. So you need at least 2 or 3 people with team leaders to be able to do it. So if 1 or 2 people can't make it, the team can still go on. So if we had 6 people, we had 1 team. If we had 12, we can have 2 teams, and you do the math for the rest of it. So now I'd like Mark and Carolyn and Joan to come up here, so on the questions and comments that come, they can add also, and you can see some of the people who are doing what I just told you. So I hope you're interested, and I hope you'll sign up, and I hope you'll join us.
One more question, attorney. What in the law, in New York State law, as a lawyer, would you think should we rescind in favor of the homeless? In your experience?
About
Eric, if I
this
could just
program.
also, because I have to go into another event in a few minutes, but I'm glad that I'm able to step in here before I leave. I just want to clarify what we do at our Midtown team. We have a number of members there, and as Norm said, Church of St. Francis of Assisi is a safe haven for many homeless people. Every morning at 7 a.m. they do what they call their St. Francis bread line. They've been doing it since 1930.
1930, wow.
For 93 years, and it's 3 days because of Hurricane Sandy. So homeless people stay there, and it's a safe place for them to come. So we go at night, we set up a table, we now serving some hot beverages, and we have a table for clothes, because it's getting cold. And then sometimes we invite other groups to come and provide some dinner so that people come and we get to talk to them. And as Norman said, we create a community. A community where we get to know people, and we can say, can we help you find a safe place? Would you like us to try to find a safe place for you? And many people have seen what the city's offering, and they don't want it. They just leave me alone. I've already seen that. I've been harassed, I've been attacked, I've been threatened. So we will say, in one case, one guy was concerned about going onto the van. I said, what's going on? He said, I don't trust it. I said, I'll follow the van. And I'll go to where they bring you, and if you don't like it, I'll bring you back. Bringing them back was sleeping on a piece of cardboard in front of the church. That's what bringing, because at least he knew where he was gonna be in front of the church. He didn't know where, they could have taken him out to the middle of nowhere and then say, if you don't like it, you know, walk someplace else. But what we try to do is create a sense of safety. And over time, we help people find a safe place. And as Norm said, the most important thing that we're doing is we are in ongoing communication with the city, and we're saying to them what we're finding, and we're saying you need to change things in some of the places where you're sending people. So that's really important part of what we do. It's establishing relationships, and as we say, it's really as much for you as for anyone else. It's all of us have to learn to be able to be more comfortable with folks on the street, so they can be more comfortable with us. So as the opportunities to change things happen, we can be part of that conversation. But I also want to just say a little advertisement. If any of you would like to bring any clothes to join us Thursday in front of the church, it's getting very cold. We have a table set up for clothes. You're welcome. Again, it's West 31st between 6 and 7. And we have a table, and just people are cold. We're actually right down the street from a migrant hotel from 7 to 9. We're there every Thursday except for Thanksgiving, and we welcome you. And Shaniqua was a great member of our team. And there's a lot of things we can do there. We serve hot coffee, hot tea, hot chocolate. Now we're providing some oatmeal and some cup of soup. So we kind of a little bit expanded. Also, we have a group from the Muslims Giving Back. They have this hunger truck. Every third Thursday they provide meals. We have a Hindu group that wants to be providing meals once a month. We're trying to work that out. So we try to create a place where everybody feels welcome. And it really is a very wonderful experience, and I welcome all of you, and thank you. And I just want to say, it's such a pleasure to work with this man. It is, it really is, because he's been doing such great work for so many years. To see him so involved in homelessness is really just it's so moving to me. So thank you, Norman.
Thank you. So, I've also got to go to an event at the center next door, but so I'm gonna leave it in Mr. Siegal's capable hand, and also my staff here, our whole amazing team here: Lori Harjo-Warogo, Hannah Moses, Carl Wilson, Nicole Bart, Max Giuliani, and so please ask questions about really what the next steps are with how to get involved.
And just give us your name, your social security number, know how much.
Thanks to Councilman Eric for putting this event together. My name is Gillian McIntyre. I run the.
What's your name?
My name is Gillian McIntyre. I run the Friends of Bleecker Playground non-for-profit. So it's the small children's playground on Hudson with Bleecker Street. We're doing an event on the 7th of December. It is a Thursday, but it's from 4 to 6. I'd love you to come along. It's called Teach Kids to Give, and we have the community bring in. It's a joint partnership with Perry School, and we have children bring in their gently worn coats, and they write messages, and they put them in their jackets, and we take those coats to the shelters. And last year we collected about 500 coats. So it's a very serious effort, but I really believe that it starts with the kids and educating the kids about this problem. So I'd love you if you could attend it from 4 to 6. But I guess the question also is, what would you advise, parents to do? The way I brought up my son is that, if he sees an older homeless person on the streets, to run into a deli and buy a pack of food. And he does that in his own, this is 14 years old now, so he does that in his own, intuition. But what sort of advice, if they can't get involved with your incredible service, what advice would you give to parents? As we're seeing in the West Village an increase in the amount of homelessness, and it's really hard because, I've approached homeless people, and they've been like, I don't know how to say this, it sounds really inappropriate, but sort of
Not so nice.
aggressive, of asking for money or things like that, right? And I won't give money, but I will go and get food for someone. So I guess the question to you is, well, number one, I'd love
on the children's stuff, I do the same thing. Don't give them money, go get a sandwich or a cup of coffee. And although a cup of coffee costs you $3 or $4 these days in certain places. So
Or more.
you have to give some money to the kids to do that. I think that, if they're just walking by in a group of students, you can just say, hi, hope you have a nice day, but nothing more. Because we have a standard, for someone who's under 18, legally, I need the parents' permission to let them come out with us. And we have to be careful about minors. And again, I hope this comes out okay. There's some people out on the street who are con men.
Yeah.
And you've got to be very careful, because if they see a mark, and your kid could be a mark, and we don't want any of your kids or anyone, or even adults. We have a couple of college grads. I got one who's so cynical, I gotta bring her spirit up. And then I got another one who's so naive, I gotta bring her down. Because otherwise, and some of those guys, both of them, I think these are very attractive, and they're telegenic, okay? And so, they gotta be careful that the guy out there sees these two young, good-looking women, and he's thinking about something else. That's the last thing I need to have in our program, that something happens that way. So we've got to train people, and with the kids, it's triple that. Be very careful. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, 4? What the was?
So I'm curious, I know that there are a lot of street homeless organizations out there, right, reaching out and on a daily basis or nightly basis and down in the subways, and there are all sorts of programs, and I'm wondering, do you coordinate with those? And I know that those programs, especially the ones that have some of the city contracts, they have the devices with them about like where there are opportunities to place people, whether it's the safe havens or wherever, and I'm just wondering, do you coordinate with the organizations that already exist in certain neighborhoods, and how do you identify what safe havens or what beds are available to offer to people, and where your vans go?
Let me take the second part, and Mark,
Yeah, go ahead.
take the first, and anyone else. The neighborhoods, we work with the Department of Homeless Services. They have a thing called the Joint Command Center,
Yep.
all military terms, which I
Yep.
don't like. But in the context of that, we then call in and ask them, once we give the name and the date of birth, whether they have a place for that person. They'll say to us, does that person have a priority as to which borough? Do they have a priority of what kind of place they want? And then they usually ask us for their social security number. I say, I don't have to give it to you. I don't think you should be asking that question. Is the person mobile? Because if they can't get up the stairs, they gotta put them in a
Sure.
hotel place.
Yeah.
With regard to the other groups, let Mark.
Yeah, so first I want to say there are, as you say, many, many organizations doing street outreach in all different ways. The gentleman over there, Pietro, worked with a group called Community San Egidio, and they do incredible work. Every Tuesday they start in Midtown, and they go out in pairs, in groups of 2, and they walk throughout Midtown, and they encounter people. They encounter people every week, and they get to know them, and they work with them until they get their issues resolved, and sometimes for years. So, but they are very unusual. Many groups are paid. I think those folks, except for Pietro, who's one staff person, are volunteers. But many groups are paid. Frankly, they're probably underpaid. They're probably overwhelmed. They're probably frustrated. And so a lot of groups are impatient. Maybe they have to make their numbers, or they're not, frankly, the tone set by the organization is not as humane as it should be. And so often people are not well treated by the people out there who are professional helping people. Some organizations are very different. I mean, some are better than others. Some are total scams, some are from heaven, and others are somewhere in between. I think the key for us is, as Norm was saying, it's really a matter of establishing a personal relationship and respecting that individual. Even if you can't help them then, what you're really helping them with is saying, you matter. You are important. You're a child of God. You have every right to have what you need, and let's see if we can help you. But in the meantime, I want to tell you I respect you and I value you. And one thing I want to say, the woman who left, I think, talking about encountering people who are sometimes difficult. And one thing I learned from a woman that Norman put me in touch with, there are many folks out there who are actually suffering from traumatic brain injury. And some of them know it. A man I've been known for a while who's homeless, who sometimes, very intelligent, but sometimes although, he told me, I'm suffering from traumatic brain injury. There's another person we're working with who hasn't said that, but he thought someone was going to touch a button on the wall that would blow up the building. And that's why he was glaring at somebody. He wasn't dangerous at all. He looked scary, but it was because he thought someone was going to explode the building where he sleeps. So I think you have to, as Norm said, keep your distance. I mean, let someone else tell you how close they're comfortable with you going to them. Look at them. If they look at you, say, okay, can I help you? If they say nothing. But I think it's really a matter of how we can be personally respectful of people and help them while we're trying to change the system. Because the system often is not responsive to their needs. And that's really what we're trying to do, is help the system change. But frankly, let me just say, the need out there is greater than the capacity of the staff who are in positions to help them, which is why I think volunteers are so needed. These folks are working very hard, they're overwhelmed, they're frustrated. We need to find a way to get the system to work better, so it's less overwhelming to the workers.
I've had conversations with, I'm Conrad, I've had conversations with people, and they ask for things that I'm giving them crackers or clothes or just saying hello, but they ask like, I just want a shower, or like,
Yeah.
I want a bed, and like, is that number you mentioned something that I or someone else can call? Like, or is there a decision tree or, something like that I could use? And
It took us a while where we could now call those numbers
right.
and identify our part of the Street Homeless Advocacy Project, and then they respond. Initially, we had DHS, Department of Homeless Service workers with us who made the calls, but at least where I worked, some of them I had problems with, so I asked for permission, can I just do it without the middle person? And they said yes. It worked better and quicker, and now we have each one of our teams, they have the name of the team leader who can make that call. So if people are part of us, you can. I can give you the number if you want to try it on your own. I don't know whether that will work or not, but it is supposed to be a 24/7. Do you have something to add to that?
I just wanted to add that it's a little over a year old now on 14th Street, 114 West 14th, right across from the Y. If you're from this area, is a safe haven and a drop-in, and they do have showers and laundry and food and full services. So if there's anyone who's ever down here and someone is looking for something to eat or looking for a place that they can shower, right across from the Y, they can walk in and all the services will be there with it.
Let's move on to number 3.
Hi, my name is Nick. I live at Hell's Kitchen. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, which has obviously had its own set of homeless issues, as we can see in the news and things like that. One thing that I'm curious about is, of course, there's a pretty clear connection between uses of opiates, drugs, things like that. And I was kind of wondering, you were mentioning that you do address some folks. There's other folks who you don't address necessarily on the street. Tell me a little bit about how that's kind of been going with some of the drug users. Are those people who this group still approaches? Is it, a group that we kind of identify and pass on to a different organization who has more expertise in that? I was just kind of curious, since especially in Hell's Kitchen, I noticed that that's kind of where the bulk of our homeless population kind of
It's one of
struggles.
the above, and so the people that we stay away from, I'll go step out. I've had at least 3 or 4 instances where the people are just screaming, and they're out of control. And even though I'm opposed to involuntary commitment, if they want to have those people taken in, I would not oppose it, because it seems to me they're a danger to others. I don't know if they're a danger to themselves by just screaming and yelling, because they're not hurting anyone other than themselves. And then with regard to the drug people, you make a judgment, how do I put it? There's a group of guys I know that are doing drugs, and they're hostile to us. So when we go out next Thursday, if they're in their same little location, I tell the volunteers, leave them alone. If, on the other hand, they're not hostile to us, we begin to talk with them. And we're not there to put the cops on them. We've had people, maybe you want to talk a little about Washington Square Park. She did Washington Square Park, and they've had to deal with the whole issue of drugs. You want to?
Well, also there was one, before I started going to Washington Square Park, I was going to Tompkins Square Park. One evening, we had, a gentleman who had agreed that he was gonna go into, shelter or whatever, and then we were waiting for the bus to come, and then it turned out he had drug paraphernalia next to him. And the police came over and tried to arrest him, and we intervened and said, no, this gentleman is not abusing drugs, we are helping him, and we were able to prevent him from being arrested, so that was.
So generally, again, when I said before, we try not to make judgments about people out there, just because that's who we are. And second, if we're making judgments, it's going to be counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve. But we're not going to put any of ourselves in harm's way, and that's a judgment call, and that's why the training is needed about the do's and the don'ts, and why there has to be in each team a team leader. So for example, when I have new people coming, the first hour or so, I'll do the interviews, and they'll see. Then I'll have that person do the interviews and sort of like professor, mentor, then critique it afterwards constructively. I'm not going to do it negatively because the person will never come back. So that's what we try to do. And the more you're out there, the more you get a better sense and do it. Not perfect to how to do it. And then sometimes at Staten Island, where there are really problematic cases, we've asked for some support for people that are licensed, but sometimes they, even though they're licensed, are doing it inconsistent with the way we try to do it. And so in that case, I don't want that group. Also, when I talked about the other groups, when we first set up in August of 2022 and did a couple of trainings, we had some of the people from the major, like BRC and Breaking Ground, we asked them to come and do the training initially, and they were very good. But again, when we found out more about the homeless people, talking about those groups that run some of the places, there were mixed reviews. So generally, for me at least, I try to stay away as much as I can from the established groups and try to do it just with the people at JCC. Okay.
That's my turn.
Here,
So-
here, and there.
Thank you for the event. I'm about to leave because I have another event coming up. But I would like to, Judy, if you want to say something, ask something to him because before we leave. Right, and we want to.
We can talk separately, privately. I'll stay around.
Thank you.
Okay.
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 So that's it. So thank you for everything, and I'm leaving now.